I'd be scared if I were you. You know they got your number on the wall. Everybody's waiting for your move, and it's a long way down. They're creeping in the margins of your paper and seeping in the edges of your town. No one knows what happened to the neighbors, and it's a long way down. But don't let them fuck with your heart. Don't let them fuck with your heart. And every time it rains, I get the feeling got a little hole above my head. One more drop comes falling through the ceiling, and it's a long way down. So don't let them fuck with your heart. Don't let them fuck with your heart. Oh, no, no. Don't let them fuck with your heart. Don't let them fuck with got to be goddamn kidding me. This ain't what I need. Please just let me be. So take a little moment to remember and build a little fort around your bed. No one's seen the likes of you before, and they're a long way down. Don't let them fuck with your got to be goddamn kidding me. Get that. Please just stop. Can you let me be?
That was DLTFWYH by Tokyo Police Club. I'm Kaila.
And I'm Gaia.
And welcome to the Public Debate, the new debate show here on CHSR FM. And yes, we actually got the name right that time.
Number 97.9 FM.
There we go. We're rocking this.
Actually on ball for once.
Oh, yes.
Kind of breaking it by saying we're actually on ball for once, but
We're trying.
Doing our best.
We're doing our best. We'll get there.
So, what's the topic for today?
Today, the topic is the death penalty and whether or not we should allow it.
So, should we give a bit of background on the topic? I think everyone knows something about it, but it's good to discuss.
Sure. Do you want to start us off?
Okay. So, for this topic, it has a much less glamorous beginning. Last week, of the time of airing, it's yesterday for us for recording. It's actually March 1st for us.
Fun facts.
Fun facts, we bulk record. Not really, actually. We're just recording a few because it's really fun. But, so last week we discussed book burnings and banning of books. We had the beginning of the Library of Alexandria and around the time of World War II and our feelings on the banning of books back then, and that we both are not real fans of it. I held the debate under... what was it? That we should be allowed to ban, and you held the debate that we should not be. And we kind of reached a conclusion at the end that the best solution would be have discussions in books to discuss the problems that could arise from certain types of books, such as the Communist Manifesto.
To clarify, we won't always reach a conclusion, but it just kind of worked out kind of nicely.
Considering this week's topic, it might be a little more difficult. So
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, as we mentioned, today we're going to be discussing the death penalty, and should it be instated in some manner or not. So the best conclusion we could get is how much we should limit the death penalty, which is a bit of a different topic.
Yeah, that's going to be a little bit.
That's probably going to be where our compromise is. So there's no glamorous background for this. The biggest thing that I think of when I think of this topic is the fact that the U.S. actually still has the death penalty.
Does it really?
It does,
I have done
only in a few states.
In a few?
Yeah, I don't think the entire country does. A lot of states don't want to work with it. And there's actually a few problems with the death penalty, so I don't know how many people have looked into this.
A few?
No, there's a really bad problem, like one that's worse than running the death penalty.
Do you wanna let me know what that is?
Yeah, I'm going into it. So basically, the death penalty requires three things. You have to first put them to sleep peacefully. Then you have to shut down their nervous system so they can't feel any pain and won't wake up. Then you use a drug that kills them. The issue is 3 drugs that do this do not interact in a friendly way. They really don't. The chemistry behind them is just bad all overall. And because of that, you need to be very, very specific about what you're putting in a person, or you're going to run into huge problems. And the only company that actually made the serum that the U.S. used that actually worked stopped producing it and refuses to sell it on an ethical ground. Like, they were making a lot of money off of it, being having a monopoly.
Damn, go them.
Yeah, but it was a German company, and they just decided they did not feel comfortable with doing this anymore, so they stopped doing it. So the U.S. doesn't have any anymore. They didn't stockpile because the shutdown was sudden, right? And so now the U.S. is stuck trying to use their own made serums, which are a huge problem because these people very often don't die and suffer for a very long time under the current death penalty. And it's actually a complete massive problem just facing the United States as a whole, because even though they don't sentence that many people to death, it's really not good. So yeah, that's what comes to mind when I think of this. So for the purpose of this debate, I don't know if we should really include that as a factor.
I don't think so.
No, so we should consider that there is a company that can make the serum proper.
Yeah, because under that grounds, your argument, because in this argument, Gaia is in favor of it, simply because one of us has to be. And I'm going to be negative on this.
Yeah. That situation would kind of kill me.
Yeah, that.
Just like the death penalty.
Having that as part of the debate would be detrimental for you.
I think
it would really
rules.
put the nail in your coffin.
My
so to speak.
Yeah, I definitely don't like the idea of just being shut down so quickly, especially because assuming the death penalty was legal across multiple countries, there would definitely be a company who would get a working serum.
Oh, yes.
So we're going to assume that the serum is, because the recipe still exists, so we're going to assume the recipe is released.
Okay. So we're just going to assume some hypothetical situation.
Yeah, we need to create a hypothetical for me to have a chance of having any grounds.
Okay. So are we talking about this for the U.S. specifically? Because they're the ones with the death penalty?
Yeah, I think because they have it, we can definitely discuss that. They assume the country has it already, has a working death penalty, and should it be removed?
Okay.
Okay. So since you probably have a bit of a stronger opinion on this, do you want to begin?
Sure. So, the death penalty is bad, which is a great way to start this. But clearly, the death penalty has its faults. To be able to sentence someone to death is a lot of power to put in one person's hands.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of emotional decisions that people might be able to make on a whim.
Yeah.
I know that when people have been put to death, they segregate the jobs into different people so no one can have like one full responsibility for it. It's, oh, I just walked him down the hallway. Oh, I just strapped that person into the chair. Oh, I just pushed the plunger. Oh, I just measured out these chemicals. Oh, I just did this one portion.
Yeah.
So that no one can take full responsibility, so that they can't feel bad for the entire situation.
There's no blood on their hands.
There's no specific blood on their hands because they only did one thing. And when you have to divide something up to that degree, it's probably not a good thing. It's like having to say, I'm not racist.
But,
like, you're probably about to say something racist. If you have to divide something up to that certain amount, it's probably not a good thing that you're doing if you have to, like, divide the blame between, like, 18 people just so that you guys don't feel bad. Like, that's not something that you should be doing for anyone, for anybody's emotional health, let alone the people who have been put to death. For anyone's emotional health, that's not something that you should be doing. And then for the people who have been put to death, do we have the right to do that? When let's say this hypothetical, someone who has been put to death or is in the process of being put to death, like the decision is being made currently about whether or not to put them to death, what did they do? Say they murdered someone.
Okay.
They have been put to death for that.
Yeah.
We get to decide whether or not they're put to death. Aren't we also murdering them? And if so, shouldn't we also be put to death? And that just creates more problems. Are we not murdering them? Yes, there is...
Yes.
I mean, like... sorry, that's a separate sentence. Not an answer to my own question. Yes, there's problems with this outlook on it. Like, obviously, there's steps in place for not one singular person to get the blame on that. There'll be judges, there'll be juries, there'll be whatever. But that falls by the same measure that putting someone to death does. If you have to divide up the blame to that degree, is it truly a good thing to do? And for the person who's actually sentenced, for people who not even sentenced to death, but just are sentenced to be in prison already, rehabilitation is possible. Our prisons aren't great, as kind of a general rule.
Not even general. You can make it specific still, right?
I don't know enough to do anything super specific or have like stats or anything. This isn't something I've researched to like a great degree.
No, we don't like to make these research. It's a lot more fun to come in opinionated.
Yeah. But like to really speak to what happens in prisons and if they're good or not, I would need to do more research to be accurate and actually broadcast that opinion because people will listen to this.
Yeah, that's
hopefully.
True. Hopefully.
Please tune in.
I upload these online.
What's that?
I upload these online.
Yes, people should listen to these. Please tune in repeatedly. We'd love to have you.
14 minutes in, you're promoting.
You're never gonna get away from this. So, prisons. For people who've been sentenced to them in this country, in America, in other countries, I can't speak to all of them, but as a general rule, prisons aren't always amazing. They're not designed to be amazing. They're generally prisons. They're designed for a place to just put people away. And that's not always a good action to take. Yes, it's good to get certain people away from society, especially if they've violently murdered people, surely. But rehabilitation is possible for many offenses that might get you put to death. Like, there's so many steps you could take. That being said, I also don't know what gets you put to death.
Do you want me to jump in here?
I'm going to finish my thought real quick
Sure
and then jump in and tell me how wrong this point is once I have more information. But there's a lot of rehabilitation possible that we just don't invest in. If we provided training for these people these prisoners in jail, etc., if we provided training for them for jobs, if we made it easier for people with criminal records to get at least lower end jobs and like to make a sustainable wage and to be able to afford a place to live and an actual the cost of living to be able to feed themselves, etc., and give them training and allow them to like be rehabilitated from any drugs they have been using in the past, etc., have like AA meetings or whatever you need. There are options that you can have and you can use that we don't invest in as a general rule, that would make it easier for people to reintegrate into society in a decently okay manner that isn't currently available to them. And to completely eliminate that off the table, to completely betray any hope these people have of rehabilitation at all. Like, even a lifetime sentence in any prison, not that I've been to prison, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure they have books.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, because you can't just, like, sit there and do nothing. So, like, even a lifetime in prison, you'll have something to do, you'll have something to read, you can learn. And to deprive people of that and to deprive people of the possibility of rehabilitation and the possibility of gaining a better life, that shouldn't always be something we're allowed to do. And that gets into a different debate about whether or not we should invest more in prisons, but and what we can do to help people get out of prisons to begin with or not even go in. But how this plays into the death penalty is that when you what's the word I'm looking for? Condone someone? No.
Condone to death works.
Convict?
Convict is probably the more official word.
Convict someone to death.
Yeah.
You take away their life, clearly, but do you take away any hope they have of possible reintegration that could be possible in certain scenarios? I'm not saying like you should let violent murderers or rapists out onto the streets. That's not something that should be allowed. That being said, there are possibilities. I don't know everyone's criminal records. I don't know why these people are in jail. I didn't, probably not. I don't know why they've been sentenced to death. Sentence was the word I was looking for.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that when I got my time.
Yeah, sorry. I keep talking. I'm like, I'm going to finish this thought, and then I just keep rambling. But you're taking away someone's future, clearly, and you're taking away the possibility of a future that could indeed be there, and we are just ignoring. And those are the first few, but you had points and I need more information. So we're going to swap over to you.
I love how you jump over to me for your statistics. I'm not going to give statistics that support you that much.
You're not supposed to, technically. You're on my opposing side.
Yeah. Am I echoing or anything, by the way?
What, sorry?
Am I echoing?
No, you're
okay,
good.
Fine, because I thought I was echoing. Anyway, okay, so I'm going to discuss why the death penalty should be instated. So here's the most important thing we need to mention. The prison system is not good.
No.
The United States prison system is the most populated prison system in the world.
Are we still going with the United States?
We should.
I kind of lost track of that in the middle and was like,
pretty much everything you said actually was still fully applied to the United States. So we'll go along with that.
Good.
So the United States prison system is the most populous prison system in the world, with 5 times as many inmates as the second most popular.
I know that there's other countries that their prisons are so depopulated and completely empty that like they rent out spaces
Denmark
to America. I thought it was Denmark.
The Nordic countries, specifically Denmark, I think it was, or Sweden.
Yeah, it's Denmark or Sweden.
Yeah, or Switzerland even, but I don't think Switzerland. Anyway, so the U.S. Actually has 2/3 of the entire global population of prisoners, which is a bit much. And there's a few other statistics. Like the U.S. has more prisoners than a bunch of countries have people. So
if
it's
they took away
a
a little bit
number.
of the military budget and invested it into...
That's controversial for this topic.
Ooh, we're going to get into that at a separate time.
I would love to do that.
Anyways, sorry, back on topic.
So the U.S. prison system is a very, very overpopulated and has far too many people already to monitor. So it's led to a big problem that either you need to spend a fortune of government funds on prisons, you need to privatize them, which leads to like abuse and maltreatment of prisoners. And no matter which one you do, there's the full possibility of people breaking out of prisons and people already being tortured in prisons. So putting more people in prisons is a huge problem, and already with such bad prisons, we cannot trust them to hold in the people that we need to keep in. Like, there's definitely a lot of prisons that accept people who are non-dangerous criminals. The United States has a very high record of arresting non-dangerous felons, but even so, or incarcerating non-dangerous felons, I should say. Even so, there's a lot of high security prisons that we need to hold some pretty dangerous people that are not doing a good job of holding these dangerous people. If you search out prison breakouts, you can find a lot of examples of like pretty bad people getting out of prison.
On that note, not the pretty bad people getting out of prison, but on the sheer population of prisoners in American prisons.
Mm-hmm.
If we didn't focus quite so much on the non-violent felons, I'm going to put this one out here again. I don't know why this is my main point now, but if we focus more on rehabilitation of these people and actually focused on, like, for example, there's been so many black people who have gone away for marijuana.
Yeah, that's probably one of the most common ones, I think.
That shouldn't be. And if we focus less on things like that, and more on things like keeping those actual violent people that we need off the streets in prison, and if we focus on, keeping them there and keeping them safe there, and helping be a loosely used term here. I'm not entirely...
Very, very loosely.
I'm not entirely sure what would... Again, I don't have the most information on prisons here.
I haven't given most of it yet.
So, I'm not sure what you would need, but, like, to focus more on that and to not have so many... The overabundance of people in prisons for issues that should never send them to jail... It would work out better, and you wouldn't need to kill people off to spare a bed.
I was not going to say that.
But that was what you were leading to.
That's actually not what I was leading to.
Okay, never mind.
That's what it sounded like, but I realized it was sounding like that. I was trying to curve it away.
Oops. Here we go.
Specifically, ignoring that we arrest a lot of non-dangerous felons, because I don't think that's not really our topic, but it's a very important fact. A big problem with the prisons is because of the amount of people, because of the amount of logistics, and because of the fact we need to already privatize that, like give it to like private companies the government doesn't own, the prisons are not safe, and they're not keeping people in we need to keep in. And there's a lot of people that would, if they got out, would be a very highly dangerous force. Because there's a lot of people who don't care actually about the crimes they commit. Like you can spend hours and hours and hours, days, years rehabilitating someone, and they can show perfect signs of rehabilitation, but not be rehabilitated. There's the full possibility that a very high amount of people, a very high amount of very dangerous people, can get out of prison or even like be let out on probation and just go back to doing their dangerous thing that we didn't want. Serial killers, pretty bad for this. There's a lot of serial killers who plan out their way of getting out of prison because they like to kill, or maybe they don't want to kill anymore, but they just don't want to be in prison. They get out. Because of this, it's a full possibility that we need to notice that when people are getting out and we can't keep them in, yes, we need to fix our prison system, but even with fixes, they can get out, and it's going to cause a lot of problems. So one solution to this is to instate the death penalty for the highly dangerous people who, if they got out, could cause a huge problem.
How do you judge... Sorry, I got really close to my mic for a hot second. How do you judge when they're highly dangerous in comparison to say just doing something stupid in...
Don't put your mic too far away now.
I'm sorry. I was hitting the wall. I needed to
yeah.
shift. I
Yeah, that's
apologize. How do you judge when it's too dangerous? How do you judge when you should start killing someone?
Well, I still need to finish my points, but so to judge when it's good to start killing someone, it's a very case-by-case judgment, but we need to keep in mind we do already have grounds for when we kill someone. So the current system of the United States, which is probably the most lenient from the death penalty I've ever seen, is not France with the guillotine. The United States death penalty requires someone to be incarcerated for the death penalty, months and months of paperwork, and 2 trials after the first one to prove them guilty again to go to get the death sentence. And I don't think it can be the same judge for those other 2. Like, it needs to be a new judge every time with a new set of jury. Depending if it has jury. A lot of American courts don't have that anymore, which is another issue we need to discuss.
Okay.
Yeah, majority of U.S. courts actually don't have juries anymore.
Love that.
You have a right to a jury, but it costs a lot of money, and they can deny your right basically now. Anyway.
There's a lot of things that America is denying right now.
That's true. But specifically with the death penalty, it's a multi-year process. Most people who are sentenced to the death penalty will not get killed for over 7 years because they need to keep proving them guilty, and they need to make sure nothing services that prove them innocent, and we need to make sure that the standards of the time later are still proper to get rid of them. So
get rid of them. Let's just focus on that wording right there.
Sorry,
for a minute.
I said it and then stopped. It was like, oh.
That right there is why we shouldn't have the death penalty. We can't just get rid of people. We can't just brush them aside or sweep them under the rug. They are not a dust bunny you can hide. They are a living, breathing human being.
But leaving them in the prison is exactly what sweeping them under the rug would be. Putting them in a prison is just taking them, shoving them somewhere else, and hoping nothing bad will happen, and hoping everything will keep them there. Sure, it could, but there is the issue that we need to face that our prison systems don't hold people in, and we already spend so long making sure that they are guilty of the crime, and that they should be sentenced to death, and that multiple people think they should, and like a very high number, that we're not running into the risk of not sentencing someone correctly. It's very rare to see an instance where someone was actually innocent who got killed because of just the sheer amount of time. It's more that the people who do get sentenced to death penalty are very, very bad people, usually mass serial killers, people who were labeled domestic terrorists by like a very high degree. Not the standard, oh, they're terrorists, they didn't harm anyone, they're just a terrorist, but the actual, they killed 20 people terrorists. You also get the sentence. And mass murder thing.
The issue with, there's definitely issues with prison, what's the word you've been using?
Sentencing?
No, system.
System.
I don't know why the word system evaded me there, but
yeah,
we're here. There's definitely issues with the prison system that should be addressed, and you're definitely pointing them out. Like, I'm pointing them out.
Yeah.
Like, there's definitely problems beyond
the prison system.
the death sentence.
But I guess I'm not getting to why we should kill them, am I?
No, you are. I just thought of a point, and I was like, it kind of applies. I'm sorry, I just keep interrupting you with like, especially with the current government in America right now. What's to stop us from changing the regulations? Because I know that there's lots of rules in place, and there's the safety checks, and there's like, I don't know, the Senate. I'm not entirely sure how American politics. The
Supreme Court handles
Supreme Court. There's a lot of things that America has that I'm not entirely sure how it works.
Yeah, I look a lot to American government, so I can help you out there.
Yeah, I wasn't fully aware of where this would go, so I wasn't sure what debate research should happen. So, especially in America right now, with the current American political situation, they're changing a lot of things that we didn't think should be changed.
That's true.
That we didn't think could be changed.
Yeah.
And what's to stop them from, if something crazy were to happen, and they're like, oh God, we need to kill more people in these prisons. What's to stop? Yeah, because that's what we're arguing. That is
what we're arguing.
Yeah, like, what's to stop them from making that decision and just being like, all right, here we go, we're going to change this, and then being able to kill whatever they want. This isn't a decision about whether or not these people, the people that you're talking about, like the people who want to get out and who have killed so many people and who are brutal and horrible and those kind of people. This isn't necessarily a decision or a debate about whether or not they should have the death penalty. It is a debate about the slippery slope that decision will provide and where we will slide to.
Yeah, so in response to that, with the death penalty, even if the government tried to change the laws on it, it's actually really hard to. So the way the actual most governments work, this actually includes Canada's government, is the legislator and Senate writes the bills and the courts interpret them for how they should be taken. This is why it actually would be really hard to change the death penalty, because judges would have the full right to say this is non-ethical and we do not have the right to enforce this, and choose not to. They're not supposed to, but this is where the Supreme Court comes in. So it's really hard to stack the Supreme Court with people in your favor. The U.S. government's having some success doing it now. The Supreme Court's a little stacked at the moment, but on this issue especially, it's really hard to stack the Supreme Court because this is such a contentious issue. The Supreme Court does have the full right to say the government's decision was unethical to the point that it's going to cause problems, and actually reverse the bill. They did this with the immigration bill that the president tried to pass recently, of banning immigrants from 7 or 11 Muslim majority nations in the Middle East.
I'm really, really glad that they...
Yeah, they shut it down twice. It actually got through last month. So the ban has happened. I don't think it's as much as Trump wanted, but the ban has happened.
That doesn't surprise me, but
it
also...
doesn't, but it's a super watered down version.
Hurts.
Yeah.
And that's where we get the slippery slope. We didn't think things like that would happen. And if we start putting that in and say, Trump proposing a bill that's like, we should be killing off this many people, we would still end up with, there's no guarantee, but we could still possibly end up with a watered down version that is still worse than we want as a society.
That's true, but the Obama administration actually also passed a immigration rule like this, just no one noticed. Actually, most recent American government administrations have passed immigration bills like this that have banned people from coming into the country from certain other countries. It's not uncommon. So a lot of people thought it couldn't happen just because it was Trump's rhetoric. It happens a lot. The Supreme Court, even before it got stacked, was perfectly willing to pass a bill that banned immigration, but they needed a reason to, and it's just
because of racism, folks.
It is.
And it's still bad.
Yeah. During the times of 9/11 and the Afghan war, I can understand why they would want to ban people, from the place they're invading. Now, should they have invaded? I think not. That's a different topic.
Completely separate debate, but one that we should discuss.
Yeah. But even so, the American governments have done it a lot, and it is based off racism, but it's not unprecedented. Something unprecedented would be a bill saying we should kill a bunch of people, because the American government has never supported that. Whoever proposed it would lose
says
support
the
of the
person that says
yeah
the country that also still supports the death sentence.
Yeah, it still supports the death sentence, but that's not that they've made it worse. It's that they've always supported it and always have been very strict on it. So I said, someone has to go through a lot of courts. They have to go up to at least the state-based court, which is actually just one step below the Supreme Court, because Supreme Court is just a federal court. And there can't be a point where the government can say we should kill more of X person without it going through so many courts and 10 years of revision to actually get into place. So there's very little risk, I should say, of creating a situation where a lot of people are being unjustly killed without a much worse situation have already been created to the point where we've lost control. So
what part of the current political climate makes you think that losing control isn't a possibility?
It's definitely a possibility, but that's out of the scope of our discussion, because our discussion assumes democracy. Not really. Not entirely assumes democracy.
This discussion assumes that we are in America, current standing-wise, at all levels, except the fact
about the serum,
which means that losing control isn't out of our purview.
It isn't out of our purview, but it is still highly unlikely.
I'll give you that.
We'll see recently in the upcoming election. That's when we'll get an idea of how they're doing, depending on how animosity goes.
We're getting on a weird tangent.
We definitely are. But because of, basically, to wrap it all in, because of all the safety checks in, I don't see a very likely risk of the death penalty getting needlessly worse without extreme justifications. unless a dictatorship was formed. Which in that case, that's far beyond what we can expect.
That's fair.
We can't judge a dictatorship in the same way we can judge democracy.
Yeah.
Dictatorships are just one person with total power. It's a monarchy.
Yeah.
So because of that, I would definitely say there's no risk with the death penalty getting worse. And so to go back why it should be there, if we're not risking the death penalty getting to such a bad degree that it's out of our control and that it's only being used on people that we deem too dangerous to society, I definitely think that, or at least in the scope of my position, I definitely think that instating the death penalty has its benefits, especially since there's it's a high possibility that pretty much everyone who goes through the death penalty is someone who is deemed that if they escape or leave prison, more people will die. Which this breaks down to the question: do you kill one to protect the others in the possibility?
And that question also breaks down to the same thing I'm going to ask you now.
Mm-hmm.
And what are the moral implications?
The moral implication of death penalty is you killed someone.
Yes.
You
And the
killed
same
someone.
thing
Like,
happened
it's
to the other one. But the moral implications isn't just like that. The logical implications are you killed someone. The moral implications are more along the lines of how you feel, how that's going to affect the people who have had a hand in killing these people.
Yeah.
And will it cause more emotional trauma than it's worth to just keep them locked up? If we're going to agree, because current standing wise, I don't agree with it, but I do understand that safety checks and everything are keeping this in balance to the fact that it's not an exceptionally dangerous thing. It's still a slippery slope to a certain degree, but it's pretty guarded. However, there's still this moral question that has bogged down philosophers for centuries.
That's true. I think.
Do I kill one to
Aristotle
protect?
talk about this?
Possibly.
I think he did.
I don't know. Do I kill one to protect the many, or do I allow the many to die because I wouldn't have a choice in it? And we are having this choice in it.
Yeah.
That's the one that you have suggested, anyways. And we're having this choice in it, and we're having this implication where everyone plays a part in this. And we put so many people in this situation so that they can only take one shred of the blame and be like, I didn't kill them. But they still had their hands in it. Every single person still did, and there's still a lot of moral implications for each and every one of them who had a hand in killing this person that they might not have wanted to kill. They just simply had to, out of their job.
Mm-hmm.
And that will hurt them in the long run. And is that truly worth the life of this person to affect all of these people instead of just keeping this horrible person locked up in a max level prison that in all hopes should be very secure? If they are at the point where they have already gone through trials enough to be given the death sentence or be on the track to be given the death sentence, they're obviously not getting out.
It has happened. It definitely has happened where people who, because the system took too long, people escaped during the system and caused more problems. And then what can happen then is the person's killed by the police officers on the field.
Which, I mean, I don't want to be like, that's fair, but also if they're going around murdering people and they're going to come and attack the police, separate issue. That's
actually where my next point's going to begin.
Okay, cool. Anyways, separate issue for my next sentence. That's a separate issue. If most of the time, oddities occur, but most of the time, it's not like they're gonna get out. They're going to be in there. They're going to be protected. They're going to be in prison, pretty securely.
Okay.
For the most part.
Yeah, for the most part, most definitely.
So at that point, why would you endanger the mental stability of all of the people that will have a hand in this?
Yeah.
Instead of just providing this person an extra, 25 years of their life, some books, some food, some water?
Well, the first thing we need to mention is when you kill someone with the death penalty, it does affect people a lot, but it's because we don't look at it the right way. When you're killing someone due to the death penalty, you're killing someone who, if they don't die, many more might. And we don't tell that to people correctly.
But the thing is, humanity, even when you tell that to people, we're so emotional. We are emotional beings. Even if you tell someone, if you kill this person, it will help humanity. If you kill this person, you'll save many more. You shall have to look that person in the face and know that they're going to be dead in the next 2 minutes, and you had a part in it. And you have to look them in the eye and know that, and then move on with your life. And humans can't do that effectively.
They can't, but let's remember that we still have police officers and army soldiers who do essentially the same thing. The difference is when we have someone in prison, we're going to hope that we can hold on to them for long enough that they're not going to be a risk. On the army, we just take someone down instead of capturing them, most often. Like, well, maybe less the army is actually pretty good at peaceful negotiations.
And how many cases of mental disabilities happen in armies, in people who have been doing that?
Many.
There's PTSD, there's anxiety, there's depression, there's a huge amount of suicide rates.
There is, yes.
Exactly. And that is obviously on a larger scale than this.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, if those are the consequences, why would we put these innocent people at risk opposed to just keeping someone in jail?
Well, the police officers and army men are actually already innocent people, and we have deemed that their mental health is not as important as the protection they provide. So why would we think that protecting people by keeping them alive in a cell that they can escape from is better than or I can't word it. Why do we think it's better to keep someone alive in a cell instead of doing what we already do?
That gets
we still
into
send police out to do the same thing that they're going to get PTSD for. In this situation, at the very least, they don't need to be the one actively killing. It doesn't need to affect them as much, and we're still reaching a result of protecting people.
Certainly, but police and army, this isn't a great defense, clearly, but they have training to deal with that. I know that when...
Yeah, executioners do too, actually.
Yeah, and I would imagine they would,
Yeah,
but...
a lot, actually.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot. If it's not a lot, then your point strongly stands.
Oh, yes. But police and army people, their PTSD, their stuff like that, it's still very, very high. Fun fact, I don't know why this came to my brain, but fun fact, one of the highest suicide rates out of a lot of professions is dentistry.
I thought surgeons were the highest.
I said one of.
One of, that's true. I think surgeons are the highest as well.
I'm not sure why that needed to be said, but
it does state the problem. Like, to iterate what you're saying, like actually just like help you for a second.
Hit me with it.
It is true. Doctors and surgeons have such a high suicide rate because they have to live with the fact that they couldn't keep someone alive.
Exactly.
And that actually does still affect people bad.
It affects people horribly. If you can't keep people alive, if you are in charge of killing people, it affects people so horribly. Whether you're in doctors, like what's the doctor profession, medical surgeons. If you're a dentist, if you're a cop, if you're in the army, it doesn't matter. If you're tasked with keeping people alive, and if you have to do anything to the contrary of that, even if it's in the regards of keeping more people safe at the cost of a smaller amount of people, it still affects you so significantly that those suicide rates and those mental health declines are so prominent, and there's such a great issue that people have mental breakdowns when returning from war and live on the streets or turn into completely separate people.
Living on the streets is for a very different reason. That's because we don't actually give them the money they deserve after they get back.
Yes, that is completely true. But nevertheless, we're pulling in so many different things. Oh yes, but all of these issues, it's so prevalent, and we haven't done anything to stop it. And those are obviously larger scale, but if your job is a literal executioner, of course you're going to have the same effects as those doctors, as those police officers, even if it's on a slightly smaller scale because you've only walked them down the hallway, because you've only pushed the plunger, because you've only measured out a thing. You're still going to have those effects. And we should prioritize the mental health of people who are protecting us more than we do.
Then allow me to propose an alternate solution that is actually possible now. We have robots that do medicine. We have robots that can do surgery.
Are you going to propose?
They did surgery on her. Great.
Are you seriously going to propose we kill people via robot?
Well, not.
Is that a great thing to teach the AI overlords that will eventually
you don't
take
have
over?
AI watch it. You can have a person behind a screen control the robot.
But then that person takes on more
no,
responsibility than any of the other people.
What I'm about to say is they don't. The big issue, and this is actually a huge issue in psychology right now, is that when you put someone behind a screen, they can desensitize themselves to the point that to them, it's not real. This is a huge problem with video games right now. Actually, that's a big thing to worry about if video games cause violence. Statistically, they don't usually cause more violent actions, but they desensitize people to violence around them.
On that note, yes, we desensitize ourselves to it when we're sitting behind a screen, but on the same regards, humanity personalizes everything. We personify things, especially technology. Robots, oh man, that is our shit. We give it names. We give them personalities. Example,
Roombas. People keep Roombas as their pets.
Oh yes, Roombas. There was the Mars rover. What was it? Opportunity. Oppie.
Yeah.
That died. They made her an entire playlist, and it was a her, not an it, because we give inanimate objects. We treat them like people because that's what humanity does.
But how does this come back to our point?
Because if you're going to give a robot the ability to kill something and have that job, and have someone's job be to control that robot, and have someone's job to literally sit there and be like, okay, Oppie, time to go kill someone, like, that's not, like, you would, like, there's, it's like looking at your dog and being like, okay, kill it. And, like, obviously that's not always going to be the case, but, like, it's a possibility.
I don't think so. Specifically, I said robot, but the machinery that we use for surgeries are basically giant robotic arms. They're not actually, like, full-on robots you can personify.
Okay, that is slightly different.
Yeah, so the way it would only work is all you need is someone to, not even bring them to the room, put them in the hallway that moves them down to the room, and you can automate the entire thing from behind a screen. Which, if you're looking at protecting the mental health of the people who are doing this, then that's actually like a really good idea. That would very much stop almost, not entirely, but almost completely prevent the mental health problems that we're looking at.
But then that also raises the questions of how far would we take technology in this?
Well,
because if we're gonna casually use technology to kill people in our prisons, what else would we draw the line at for technology? Again, this falls into the slippery slope section of this debate.
Well, we already use this technology for drone strikes in other countries and to kill people.
And that is a completely separate issue, because that is a completely separate debate that we could... whether or not we should be allowed to do that. Yeah, it's a slippery slope. And if we start this now, where would we be? Where would this take us? Every solution you have proposed is just taking us on a different route down this slippery slope. We're never getting off of this. It's just slightly different variations upon the same downward hill.
We are always going towards the same end, but if you define the end as always being downhill, then all my solutions will go downhill. But that is very true. This solution is a very downhill solution. I fully agree with that.
I'm not saying that my solution is necessarily good, and I'm not saying that there aren't reasons as to why one might believe that the death penalty is good. I'm just saying that to institute it on a wide basis, we're debating, would be a very slippery slope that we could not go back from.
So an alternative would be, to avoid such a bad slippery slope, because I fully agree, is have one institution in the country for those on death penalty, because there's never been two on the same day. So you could very much move the person to one specific facility designed for this, with people who are extremely highly trained for this one job, who are mentally hardened for it, and are doing it behind a screen, and then you don't need to institute it widespread, you just have one institute doing it.
I feel like that draws a couple problems as well. I feel like there's always going to be problems.
There's definitely always going to be problems.
But I feel like that draws a couple of problems in why they're so mentally hardened, first of all.
Yeah, it happens to our soldiers too.
Yeah.
Soldiers, actually, there's a test to check if someone's a sociopath, which is not the term we use right now, but I'm going to use the term sociopath.
Sure.
If you do that test on a soldier, they will always test positive as a sociopath. Completely, because we have to desensitize them to what they're doing, or they're not going to be able to handle the field.
Which is fair for their circumstance.
Yeah, so we do actually allow soldiers to dislocate themselves so much that they do fall under the medical definition of sociopathy, but only on their field. That's not saying soldiers are sociopaths, but it's saying that they can induce a sociopathic-like state when on the field to protect themselves mentally.
Which is fair. Not necessarily on topic.
Yeah,
but
no, I
fair.
definitely pulled that away far too far. But yeah, there's a little fun fact for you.
Okay. But there's just some problems with that. Like, how would you transfer the people to that location?
We already do transfer them to a
safely?
Location in a single state, so it's just use the same method.
Okay. And if you're going to build an entire location for this,
Or upgrade one.
why not just build it as a very secure prison?
Well, the thing is, because if you're bringing them to this one location for a couple hours before, like, there's the chance of them escaping, well, if they get out, they can't do anything. They're going to be dead by the end of that. A very secure prison will always have the chance to get out because people have years to get out. This facility they have hours. So you can make this, no one escapes from a high secure prison in a couple hours. It's unheard of because it's so difficult. So that's why I'm proposing this system. It's not a prison, but a single building designed for one job. I know, I'm proposing like an idea. It's hard to combat because we completely left the ethical question.
Yeah, and that's the ethical question you're supposed to be debating. I feel like we're trying to find a solution for something that won't have a solution. It's literally, it's not like this is a compromisable, like last time it was very much we could find a solution.
We could.
This is a very either or situation. Either you have the death penalty or you don't.
We definitely
because currently in the US, I feel like it is about as middle ground as you can get. With all the safety checks, with all of
the US has actually a lot more problems. We didn't go a lot into detail, but the US, more recently there was actually a trial of a person who was proved innocent the day after they got the death penalty.
Exactly. There's issues. What happens after that?
Yeah.
But for what we're suggesting and all
in fact, we only have a couple minutes.
And we only have a couple minutes left. All of the things you're suggesting are much more harsh than what they have now. Yeah. And what I'm suggesting is obviously much less harsh than what they have now. So current standing wise, it is the middle ground. Please be aware I'm using air quotes on that. It is the middle ground.
The best middle ground we found in this entire discussion is make it better for the people who do it.
Yeah, that's the best middle ground. Make sure that everyone is okay for the people, killing people.
I don't think we'd ever come to compromise on if killing is correct. It's just the best.
It's just the best, because if it's never going to be gone, then there's better safeguards we can take. If there's an opportunity
which is what we definitely talked about.
Yeah, and but then there's the morality question of should it even be in place there at all, which is something that we'll never conclude because there's always going to be someone who's going to want it there, and there's always going to be people who don't want it there.
Yeah.
And right now, it's just currently, if we're going to reach a solution, also in air quotes, it's going to be if there is always going to be the death penalty, how can we limit it? How can we make it as safe as possible?
So definitely where
we
reach in our discussion is best for if it has to be there.
If it has to be there.
I don't think we're going to come to a solution.
No, because I still don't want it to be there, and you, by my position, you want it there.
I've taken 2 pretty bad positions.
You have. Next time, I'll take the bad position, just to give you a break.
So we're down to the last 2.5 minutes before we move into the song. So, I don't even know if I remember what the song is.
We're doing great.
It's this one. Okay, so I do have the song here. So before we go, let's do a quick talk about the Debate Club. Reminder.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, this show is hosted by the UNB Debate Club, newly founded, newly operational. We run every Friday from 6:30 to 7:30 in Tilly 5 on the bottom floor of Tilly next to the elevator. There's signs all over campus. Can't miss them. They're red and black.
It's a really fun time, and you should definitely participate.
We're actually coming here directly after Debate Club because we felt it would have been good to come here and talk about more of the stuff we talked about at Debate Club. So for those of you who find stuff like this interesting, I know we didn't reach a solution today. If you think you favored one person's style of debate over the other, let us know. We have a Facebook page, UNBDC, or the UNB Debate Club.
Gaia will answer most of the time.
Yeah, I still have to give you the password.
You do. I would like the password, please. But once I have the password, I will respond as well.
So, we thank you for listening. I've been Gaia.
I'm Kaila.
And we're now going to be moving into the song for tonight. The song is by the artist Copperhead from the album Touch. Do I know the name of the song is a good question.
You're trying.
The song is Dreaming, Mountain Strong. So we're going to move into there now. Thank you for listening.
See you next time.